So I invite you to be here now and step into prayer with me. Just relax, open up, and be present. I know infinite presence is all there is, right here, right now, expressing as each one of us. As I contemplate in my mind's eye the wonder of life, the wonder of nature, the wonder of my home, I recognize this wonder is here as me, as each of us. The universe opens up in lavishness for us to step through into greater possibility. This infinite presence is source of all gifts, especially the gifts of joy, of inspiration, of love. And knowing I am one with all of this, knowing that I am one with this infinite presence, we each are reflected in this oneness, imbued with infinite possibility. And so I know that all of the gifts of life are present, flowing for each of us in every moment. I accept all of life in wonder. I know that I am living in alignment with my soul's purpose. And as we breathe that in, I know that today's words inspire. The music is joy, and we are love. Knowing this is our truth, I am empowered. I am grateful. I am at peace. And in this space of simply accepting all of life's gifts, I allow, I accept, I receive. And with the deepest gratitude, I release this into the law, knowing this is our truth. And together we can say, and so it is.
So happy Labor Day. I can tell it's Labor Day because we're pretty small today. When I was growing up, there was a comic strip called Pogo, and some of you may remember that. And usually at this time, every year on this weekend, they would run a version of the strip that showed Pogo. And Pogo was a little porcupine character who lived in the Okefenokee Swamp in Florida and had various and sundry friends of his around him. And so it would show him running around. He'd be sweeping out the sidewalk, and he'd be vacuuming his house, and he'd be just madly rushing around. And his friend Albert the alligator would look at him and finally say, "Do you know, today's Labor Day. It's the day you're supposed to take off from labor." And Pogo would look at him and say, "Oh, I was confused. I thought this was the one day of the year we did labor." And the next frame is Albert kind of processing that, and then walking away going, "I think I like his idea better." So here we are, having a day off, a weekend off. So we've been working this whole year on the idea of a grand rising, of expanding, of being more, of letting this energy of the universe that wants to rise through and as us, to rise through and as us, and saying yes. And so this month we're going to be looking at the idea of moving from pieces into peace. Pieces into peace. How many of you have some area of your life where it feels like there's pieces going on, not so much peace? And so we're going to kind of play with that theme this whole year. So today we're going to talk about rising from pieces into peace. You know, last week we talked about heaven. I talked about heaven, and heaven being a state of mind, a state of harmony, not a physical location, right? It ain't up there. It's just, a state of mind. You know, we can be in the most beautiful setting and be in hell, yes? You may have experienced that. I have. And we can be in a challenging setting and still experience heaven. And peace works the same way. The world's ideas of peace, the idea of peace, is that when certain conditions are met, when certain nations or certain people stop doing what they're doing, we'll have peace, right? But like heaven, peace has nothing to do with that out there, or those people over there, or just the right circumstances. It's an inner job. It's an inside job. So Ernest Holmes, somewhere, if I peacefully pull out my notes here, my quotes, defines peace in the Science of Mind glossary as a state of inner calm so complete that nothing can disturb it. How many of you have ever had that state, at least for a moment? So just remember what that felt like. You have a memory in your body. For some of you, it may be a long time ago. The peace which comes only from the knowledge that Spirit is all. This is the peace to which Jesus referred when he said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you, not as the world gives." And he goes on to say, the infinite is always at peace because there is nothing to disturb it. And a realization of our oneness with omnipresence brings peace. So take a breath. Almost all of us get pulled out of that state of deep peace at some time, yes? It comes with living in the world. And we need this not peace to understand and appreciate peace, what peace truly is. We need the fresh air after the thunderstorm. We need the beauty of the sunrise, the morning sunrise after a tumultuous night, or we need the calm of the evening, the cool of the evening after a challenging day. And often we get pulled into not peace by challenging circumstances which can trigger discomfort within us. And so this week, Richard Rohr has been exploring the movement from order to disorder to reorder. This movement can often move us from peace to not peace. Yes? So the first state, order, is what it implies. It's in many ways a state of naivety. It's a state where everything goes the way we think it should. Yes? That's kind of the order. Everything is as it should be, and change or disorder are to be avoided so that our conditioned ego, which has an idea of what it should look like, doesn't have to face challenges which it may not know how to handle, may have to learn new things or do something different. And many people try to stay in this state for their whole lives, even a few that I know in this teaching. Not in this room, I'm saying, just... So this state is superficially peaceful. It sort of looks peaceful and orderly on the surface, yes? But as we grow, as life has this urge to expand and grow in through, and as each of us individually and all of us collectively, there's an underlying feeling that something deeper is moving and shaking. And as we talked about last week, we can listen to the whispers and go in the flow, or we can wait for the bangs, which is the 2x4 up to the forehead, of the inevitable disorder. And the disorder is inevitable because Spirit is always moving, always expressing more of its nature. That wherever we are, there's something more. And it's always going for that. It's what we call evolution. It's what we call growth. Nothing stays the same. Have you noticed? Okay. The only change is the only constant in the universe. And so we experience what the intellect labels as disorder. And it shakes up our comfortable old ideas and our old beliefs of whatever order was, which in truth was only a temporary state anyways. Yes? Okay? It's only this moment seems to be in order. We realize we can't keep polluting the planet and survive. We have the experience of, despite raising our children to be good Christians, not us, but people, raising their children to be good Christians, they suddenly come out and decide that they're gay. As time goes on, our bodies don't function the same way. Anybody besides me noticing this? Our lifelong spouse runs off with somebody else, maybe somebody of their same sex, and goes and lives in an ashram for 5 years with somebody new. Our longtime vocalist decides that she wants something different in her life, and we have a new vocalist who's not the same as the old vocalist. Yes? By the way, when the old vocalist started 10 years ago, she was not the same as the longtime vocalist we had before then. And several people were bothered by that. Mm. And so Richard Rohr describes disorder this way. He says, at some point in our lives, we will be deeply disappointed by what we were originally taught, by where our choices have led us, or by the seemingly random tragedies that take place in all of our lives. There will be a death, a disease, a disruption to our normal way of thinking or being in the world, and it is necessary if any real growth is to occur. You know, when I was a child, I grew up, as many of you know, as a devout Catholic. You know, I was an altar boy. I actually applied to the seminary at the end of 8th grade to go be a priest. Fortunately, I didn't get to do that. And by the end of high school, as I've described to many of you, I was an evangelical atheist. There is no God, and I'll preach that to anybody. And the whole thing had fallen apart. The whole order, this whole semblance of what I believe the world should look like was completely dissolved. That's disorder. We go through this, and even in our kind of a community which identifies as New Thought and has a motto of change your thinking, change your life, we resist and react to change with fear, judgment, and rigidness. We all like our comfortable ways, yes? Yeah. The disorder stage often throws us into a state of not peace, of reacting to challenges to our comfortable old ways. Doggone it, right? And even when we realize they don't work anymore, or they're gone and there's nothing we can do about it, we still can cling to old ideas and patterns and not accept the emerging new view that wants to show up and wants to be expressed through us. And by hanging on to that, by clinging, it stops our growth. We don't get to grow. And so we hear people say things like, climate change is a hoax. Evidence is all around us, but I'm going to ignore that. One of my favorites, the earth is flat because it says so in the Bible. There are people out there who still believe that, by the way. I'm going to vote for my political party because my family always has. Take a breath. Another way that some handle disorder is to just kind of throw up their hands and say, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to be cynical. I'm not going to trust anybody anymore. Everything's a sham, da-da-da-da-da. And this also cuts off the possibility of learning and growth, which the experience of disorder is really truly calling for. It's calling for us to grow into something new, into something fresh, into something that we haven't been or the planet hasn't seen before. So disorder comes from our individual and collective consciousness recognizing the need for growth. That's where disorder comes from. It's change. It's calling for an expansion into a greater experience and expression of life, which every form of life goes through. Yes? Trees grow. Animals grow. We just have choice. And oftentimes don't use that choice wisely. You know, we can sit there and resist or not. The outcome of the process of disorder, then, is not the ending point. It's just a pass-through on the way to a new order, what Richard Rohr calls reorder. And he defines that by saying in the final reorder stage, darkness and light can coexist. Paradox can be okay. We are finally at home in the only world that ever existed. You know, oftentimes when we get to this reorder stage, this new order stage, we suddenly realize, oh, this is what always was anyway. I just wasn't seeing it. The disorder calls us to a higher viewpoint. And he goes on to say, this is true and contemplative knowing. Here, death is a part of life, and failure is a part of victory. Opposites collide and unite, and everything belongs. In this stage, we come to that true inner authority where I know something, and the only nature of the knowing is that it is okay because spirit is in every moment, no matter what happens. Nothing needs to be excluded. I can live and work with all of it because apparently spirit, the infinite oneness, can also. For some unbelievable reason, contrary to logic and common sense, everything belongs. Take a breath. And of course, eventually this new order will be outgrown, and a new disorder will be created, and a new expansion, because we live in an infinite universe that is with infinite good, that is always calling for us to experience more and more and more of it. So it won't be news to anyone to say that our country and our planet is fully engaged in a state of disorder. Yes? Which challenges our sense of peace, because it looks like the world is falling to pieces. But if we understand the process that is at work, trusting and working with the process, recognizing that a new, more true view of reality is what is emerging out of this process, we can then be open to learning, to practicing compassionate curiosity, to asking what is seeking to emerge here and how can I align with and support that new emergence. And we can become part of a process that supports this new view, this new experience of reality, instead of kicking and screaming down the path of transformation. Many of us say we want transformation, yes? But what we really mean, oftentimes, is what we really want is to magically arrive at the new life with, as we like to pray for, ease and grace. But often the journey is dirty and messy. It's a hero's journey, yes? And the hero has to go out and face stuff, deal with the dragons or the whatever, the journey, usually lose something of value to gain something of greater value. That's the journey that we're playing with. And this journey, being dirty and messy, leaves us feeling vulnerable, like a snake shedding its skin or a crab in its shell, open to the possibility of predators, which in our case really exist only in our minds or in the judgments of other people about us, whose sense of disorder is challenged because we're not fitting into their idea of who we are or should be and have been. Anybody besides me ever experienced that from folks? Yeah. So what does it take to live fully in these times? First, a deep sense of peace. And understanding that the surface stuff is changing. Think of the ocean. The surface is constantly changing, constantly in motion, but the depth is in peace. The deep underlying nature of spirit of life is eternal and unchanging. This is what Ernest Holmes talked about when he talked about us having a realization of our oneness with omnipresence brings peace. A realization of our oneness with that infinite presence brings peace. It doesn't mean that the surface isn't still churning. But I'm no longer being a little, tiny boat bobbing around and up and down on that surface. I've become more deeply anchored. A second practice is to have an emergency plan. When circumstances overwhelm you, do three things. Stop, drop, and pray. Stop whatever you're doing, whatever you're focusing on, and notice that you're in a state of not peace. Just notice. Don't judge yourself. Don't beat yourself up. That just creates more not peace. And then drop from your head, which is usually where we experience conflict, to your heart. Breathe. Calm yourself. Go within. Remember what peace feels like. That's why I asked you at the beginning of the talk, how many of you have ever experienced that sense of deep peace? We have that in our muscle memory, our consciousness memory. And that's why it's also good to have a consistent spiritual practice, is because our bodies easily remember that state. And so that's step 2 of the stop, drop. And the last one is pray. But praying as spirit, not to some spirit out there or thing out there. Praying as spirit. Praying as peace. knowing that I am peace. Praying for what I want to have happen instead of what I'm afraid will happen, or trying to fix what I'm afraid will happen. Fear is faith. Right, Marlisa? Yes. Fear is faith. We had our Ernest at a Silomar study group yesterday, and that was one of the things, and we got to wrestle with that phrase a little bit. So fear is faith misdirected. Fear is having more faith that what I don't want is going to happen than what I do want is going to happen. Pray knowing there's a power for good in the world greater than we are, and we can use it. And use it. And use it. So this week, I'm going to invite you to do 2 spiritual practices. Number 1, notice an area of your life that seems to be in pieces. Anybody besides me have one of those? I think we already asked that at the start. Just notice an area that seems to be in pieces. Connect with your inner wisdom and ask what wants to be revealed here. Where am I being called to be larger, to grow, to lift up, or go deeper into something different? Ask for peace to be revealed in this situation, and be willing to learn a new way, a new order of how to be here. That's important because we're being called to learn something new, so we got to be willing to learn something new, yes? You know, right before service, I was told that I should take a class learning how to sew a button on, and I looked at the person and said, no, I'm an old white guy, and I don't know how to sew buttons on, and I can't learn. The universe is calling me to learn how. So be willing to learn a new way or order of being here. And then the second practice is, since what we contemplate grows, contemplate peace. Spend time this week contemplating peace. Are you willing to do those 2 practices? Look at where your life is in pieces and ask to be shown peace, then just contemplate peace. I want to close with a pair of quotes. The first one comes from a talk that Ernest Holmes gave. And he says, you and I know that no matter how confused we are, if we will get by ourselves long enough and think peace, we shall become peaceful. Peace is the divine reality at the heart of God. What we're doing is getting in touch with that reality. And then Richard Rohr this morning said, when we are at peace, when we are not fighting it, when we are not fixing and controlling this world, when we are not filled with anger, all we can do is start loving and forgiving. Nothing else makes sense when we are alone with the infinite. I invite you this week to be alone with the infinite and in that state of peace. And so we have an affirmation. Say this with me. I easily tune into the peace at the center of I easily tune into the peace at the center of my soul. Once again, I easily tune into the peace at the center of my soul.